Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next session at TOC on safer port operations. I'm Martin Mannion, so I'll be moderating this session here. We've got 4 topics being covered, and we've got double speakers on the first 2 of those, so that just to keep us busy. So the first, I'll call out, we'll have speakers come up for their talks, come back down again, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So I'll come to our first speakers in a minute. But really the theme of this is about how can we guarantee to have a safe working environment in our ports, because obviously that's crucial to the success of any port. And part of this is trying to learn lessons from different people here today about what technology is out there helping us do exactly that. So that will include, the patterns in accidents at terminals, particular technologies such as, for example, mooring systems or yard eye with their example as well. So how can simulation-based tools help us to ensure that the personnel, the equipment and processes are working in the right way and delivering those safe operations? I will probably come back at the end, perhaps for our first speakers. Just the general safety pattern to me as well is that it's very important that we all learn the lessons from incidents that happen in general and get good practice from each other. So maybe technology can help us on that. That might be a theme that our first speakers can help us on. Turning to our first speakers, we have our first double act of the day. It's on creating a culture of safety innovation. We have Mike Yarwood, who is the Managing Director on Loss Prevention at the TT Club, and Richard Steele, Chief Executive of International Cargo Handling Association. Both of them come with a strong background in port skills and safety and the safety of operations in general. So without further ado, if Mike and Richard would like to make a start.
Thank you very much. Welcome to this next session. Thank you very much for joining. For those of you who are unaware of TT Club or unfamiliar with TT Club, we're a mutual liability insurer specialising in the global supply chain. So everything throughout the entire supply chain, ports, terminals, logistics operators, freight forwarders. In terms of market penetration, we currently insure around 80% of the global container fleet. We have insurable interest in many of the largest ports and terminal operators globally, and we insure thousands of freight forwarding and logistics operations, but all niche in the global supply chain. As a mutual insurer, we have a very strong focus on loss prevention, understanding the risks, so developing a deep understanding of the risks that our clients and members face, and then developing and disseminating good practice and loss prevention guidance back to the industry and our membership. Typically, as Martin mentioned, learning from claims, learning from incidents that have gone by, and taking the learning from those losses and utilising in such a way so as to help other members and other industry organisations prevent and mitigate the risk of suffering a similar fate. Safety in ports in particular is a passion of ours. There are typically many moving components in any port and terminal operation, and therefore these all give rise to potential risks across a host of different disciplines, but particularly for those people and operators working within those environments. Both TT Club and ITSCA work individually but also in collaboration in facing these challenges and developing and delivering good practice, guidance throughout a whole different range of media, including publications, so documents and guidance documents, including collision provision, minimum safety designs on key cranes and other port and terminal equipment. We offer guidance, we deliver webinars, we encourage industry engagement where safety is concerned, and we also lobby at international level on important safety topics such as the handling of dangerous goods. In the context of this week at TOC Europe, we have a new joint initiative, so TT and ITSCA joint initiative, the Safety Village, which you can see and come and visit us at stand B28. The Safety Village is a new concept that we hope to be able to sort of roll out and continue to engage at TOC in future in future conferences, with the aspiration essentially of promoting innovation in safety and inciting discussion, importantly, across all stakeholders. One aspect of the concept is to encourage discussion around what keeps you as terminal operators awake at night. And in the context of sort of insurance and claims, that's not always the largest and the black swan claims events. Quite often it's the attritional losses that on a day-to-day basis are causing problems for, security managers, safety managers. It's usually the smaller attritional losses, so maybe the near misses, the junctions within the terminal that frequently see sort of potential issues with collisions with vehicles and pedestrians, and procedures and behaviours that are routinely sort of bent out of shape. Developing an understanding at this level will afford opportunities for the innovators in the room and out there in the wider industry to understand better the challenges that you face and hopefully develop innovative solutions and safety solutions to those challenges. So please do come along to the stand B28. It would be great to hear from you and to discuss your safety challenges and also your solutions. Another example, a joint initiative, again, TT Club and ITCA, was the Innovation in Safety Award. This is an annual competition that we run collaboratively, and the award aims to encourage safety innovation. Again, similar theme, especially at a time of increased operational demand on the operations within the terminal sector. It's much more than a celebration, though. The award is about learning and thought leadership. Our priority being to share all of the ideas and safety innovations received through the awards process as widely as possible and with as many different entities as possible, such as forums like this, on the basis that even those innovations that are submitted to the competition that don't ultimately get shortlisted or win might be the answer that you're looking for to address a particular problem that you have. The award also provides direct evidence that our industry is innovating and it is changing. It sets a challenge to everybody to raise standards and ensure that the people who come to work and keep the global economy going and working are able to go home after their shift, after their week's work, in the same condition that they arrived at work at the same day. The 2021 award was the fourth time that the competition has been run, and it's the fourth time that TT Club has had the honour of sponsoring it alongside ITCA. Not just sponsors in name, but actively rolling our sleeves up and proactively driving an innovation and continuous improvement programme. Over 30 entrants we received for the 2021 competition were shortlisted down to 3 finalists, being Viking Life-Saving Equipment, PSA International, and Kalmar Cargo Tech Sweden. And during a live webinar hosted virtually in February, an overall winner, Viking Life-Saving Equipment, was announced. In recognition of the valuable contribution made by all entrants, the decision was once again made to produce a digest, so a 100-page document really capturing all of the innovations that were presented through the competition. And again, just really with the view and aspiration of pushing those innovative ideas as far and wide as possible. The digest, as mentioned on the slide there, is hosted on both ITCA and TT website. It's freely available to download, and I would really encourage you to go and take a visit and have a look through some of those innovations. The aspiration, collaboratively, collectively, is to make the competition as easy and diverse and inclusive a process to maximise participation each year. So it's not too onerous a process to submit an entry. And we believe that there's great importance in investing in and promoting innovation in this way. TT Club in particular are extremely proud to be able to continue to sponsor this award, and Richard will mention in a few minutes a little more about the upcoming award for 2022. So taking a slight sideways step now, why is innovation needed? It's recognised and accepted, I think, that many operators globally are now fully bought in and invested into safety. It's become a part of the fabric of the business, a part of the culture in many operations and many countries in the world. However, we still experience and receive a number of common loss examples. So we've listed some on this screen there, but there are many others that I'm sure you'll be able to sort of recognize yourself. So confined space risks, working at height, people struck by vehicles and machinery, collisions between trucks and other handling equipment, and equipment failure, many of which are at the core, and that the causation is around process and people. But put simply, without innovation, we don't improve the risk. That it's a fundamental concept. Without the innovation and the technological solutions, we don't improve the current risk. Technology continues to improve at vast speeds, but often those with the keys to this smart technology and these solutions aren't fully versed as to what the problems are that they're trying to solve. There are many interactions that we've had over the years. I had a recent one with a company that was specializing for over 20 years in energy harvesting. Not an industry I was aware of, but they were put together and starting to work with container operators to provide a power source effectively for IoT devices. But two very different industries, one with a solution that the other was desperate for, but without any understanding and concept of the need that the other party had. So whether through the Safety Village, the Innovation in Safety Award, or any other initiative that we collaboratively run, an important component of the work that both TT and ICHCA undertake in this context is joining those dots. So understanding the risks and the fundamental risks faced by our members, and then continually developing an understanding of innovators, what's going on in the industry, across all industry, both existing and emerging technologies, and being able to, where appropriate, to join those dots and put those parties into contact with each other with a view to develop, sort of robust and sustainable safety solutions. So at that point, I'll hand over to Richard.
So thanks very much to everyone for attending. I'll try and keep this fairly quick. This is not an ICHCA sales pitch, but ICHCA itself is an organisation for cargo handling organisations. Three key things that we do. We represent the industry at the International Maritime Organisation, at the UN and various other places. We generate joint industry standards in terms of our publications. We have around about 80 of those documents on our website, designed for industry, by industry, and insight. We have a collection of industry experts, hundreds of years between them of experience, that if you have a problem, a question, an issue about safety and efficiency of cargo handling, one of or more of our experts can deal with that for you. So, trying to move on. So, I think the challenge that we've got today as ICHCA and as TT Club is to be relentless about raising the awareness of risks and the ways of managing those risks. It's important that the industry learns fast, learns once, and those lessons stay learned. The challenge to industry, I think, is to continuously improve. Our people need to get home in the same condition that they arrived at work in. The same creative energy and commitment that organisations use to deliver well-run businesses are required to deliver safe businesses. And in fact, there isn't really a difference between the two. A well-run business is a safe business. If you're in control of your operations and your activities, you're in control of safety. New technology is around, as our the safety awards has shown, we're continuously having opportunities to get better results, and fourth ports and yard eye are going to be going and speaking much more eloquently about how that can be done when I've cleared the stage. But just to give you an idea of how we can use new technologies in new and interesting ways, I'd like to give you the example of the Port of Virginia in the United States. They worked together with an innovator or a company called Loco AI. The guy who runs that used to do Hollywood special effects, but he spotted an opportunity to bring together that effects work, gaming software, artificial intelligence, and they've generated algorithms that allow 24/7 monitoring of risk areas and risk activities, and they can identify whether people are wearing PPE or not, whether people are observing traffic rules or not, and it gives them the opportunity to reward good behavior and to develop solutions where practice and behavior is suboptimal. So the TT Club Award recognizes that kind of innovation, but more importantly, as Mike said, it's about sharing those good ideas, matching the industry with innovators, and do please take a look at that digest, because there may be an idea in there that springboards what you want to do in your organization. Oh, yeah, it does work. So, just as a point here about a real-world motivation for doing the right things right, Mike can't or won't insure you for everything, for all losses. And organizations can't sort of fall back on insurance. There are things that are unquantifiable, reputational risks, commercial risks, and so on. And if that's moved along. Yeah. Here's just a few items here that are what I think are sort of non-quantifiable losses, or losses that you can't be insured for. Failure to fill orders, reputation, and potentially increased insurance rates. But I think what's key in some of those items is the effect on people and the impact on your workforces and those who are affected. Oh, it's entirely possible that the next one's about to jump through there as well. So what I would say is insurance, yes, technology, yes, but don't overlook the vital human factor in all of this. Ensure that your people get the right skills and training to do the job. Establish practical policies and procedures and enforce them, yes, but develop those with your people. No sort of sitting in locked rooms creating a beautifully presented procedure or process. Get oil and grease on it out in the workplace and get the people who do the job to work it through. And regularly review for cause or for routine. The goal really is to enable all of your people to be safety champions. Because I think there are two ways that you can look at your employees and how you see your workforce. One option is to say, people cause accidents. We need to be on top of them all the time, stopping them from doing the wrong things. And if we write enough procedures and we enforce enough, we can force safety into the organization. My proposal is that actually the people in the organization are the ones that are preventing accidents, that are creating solutions daily, hourly, by the minute to make organizations run effectively. They're dealing with uncertainty, day in, day out, and perhaps the better learning comes from learning what they do to get things right. So, I'm proud and pleased to be able to announce that the Innovation in Safety Award 2022 will kick off in September. We will do all the regular announcements and so on, but if you keep an eye on the ITSCA or the TT Club websites, you should see that, but look out for it on the 1st of September. The only entry requirements are, it needs to be innovative, it needs to be about safety. And a final point just to leave on is that safety and innovation never stops. We're looking for continuous improvement in the industry. And a colleague of mine always used to say, health and safety is like riding a bicycle. If you stop pedaling, you fall off. So, visitors at stand B28, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to our next double act on using simulation to transform operator safety. So we have Simon Harper, who's the Group Learning and Development Manager at the Port of Tilbury in the UK, David Clark, Senior Product Marketing Manager at CM Labs, not UK, Canada-based, I believe. Yeah, and they will start their presentation. Yeah.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for the introduction, Martin. My name is David Clark. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager for CM Labs Simulations. Before we get started, just a quick word about who we are and what we do. CM Labs develops physics-based simulation software, and we embed this technology into training simulators and engineering simulators that we have installed all over the world in a wide range of industries. Today, of course, I'd like to focus on the ports sector and specifically on the experience that our special guest has with simulation at the Port of Tilbury. I'm very pleased to be here with Simon Harper, who is Group Learning and Development Manager for Forth Ports, with responsibility for teams across the group, which operates 8 ports in Scotland and the Port of Tilbury on the Thames. Simon, thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Can you all hear me? Yes, good.
So before we talk about how the Port of Tilbury is using simulation to promote operator safety, could you please give us an introduction to the Port of Tilbury to kind of set the context for the discussion?
I'll keep it brief. Yes, the Port of Tilbury has been around for 132 years, so we've got skin in the game. Multimodal, diverse operation, handling around 20 million tonnes on an annual basis. We have about 10.4 kilometres of quays, and we have 13 berths. We employ around 600 people at the Port of Tilbury, but there are actually 4,500 people working for 120 different companies on our port estate. I think the big issue for us is one, resourcing, but the other, I suppose, win for us is the fact that we are located so close to London. And in fact, within a 75-mile radius, we have a marketplace of around 18 million people. I would add that we're part of the Forth Ports Group, which, as Dave has already said, which we have 7 ports up in Scotland, with Tilbury, the Port of Tilbury being located down in London, being the biggest of those.
So that said, how did the notion of simulation first land on your radar?
Interesting question. We took a slightly different approach. It wasn't about productivity, it wasn't about efficiency, it wasn't even about safety. It was very much focused on the veteran community. I managed to obtain some funding from the UK government, looking at programs to help and support the veteran community into jobs. But I felt that we had to take a very different approach, and simulation and the use of technology I saw as the best way of doing that. And therefore, trawling the world for the right type of simulator was absolutely vital to us. And eventually we happened upon CM Labs, who produced a simulator that used, industry standards. It used manufacturers' tolerances. Very important, because simulation for a lot of people is just a game. I wanted it to actually look at how people could learn or support people in their learning. So it had to feel like the real plant and equipment that we use. So that's how we got into it, through our veteran community program, which we still continue to deliver and employ those veterans. Not all in the port, often in the wider community, but it's about employing those veterans.
Okay, so for the benefit of our audience members who may not be familiar with simulation technology, can you speak a little bit to what were your buying criteria? What were you looking for in a simulator in the first place?
Well, again, I think I've alluded to it. It had to feel real. We have operators within our business who have been operating a crane for 30 years. Trying to convince them that a simulator is a great way of assessing their skills, competency, they would laugh at me. So it had to be as close to the equipment that we actually operate as possible. It also had to have the ability to deliver a number of different pieces of equipment on that simulator, because we don't just use ship-to-shore cranes, we use straddle carrier software to support the training of those individuals.
Great. On a very concrete level, can you speak a little bit to how your simulator is used in the context of operator assessment and training?
Again, this is a vital one. We've been on a learning journey with the use of simulators. We are relatively new into this, and as I said, it's been a learning curve all the time. And what we've recognised now is the benefits in terms of assessment of competency of our operatives and our older operatives, because part of the problem for us, and when we have incidents or accidents, it's not so much the younger, the newer drivers. Often it's the older drivers where they become complacent in what they do. So we have introduced a monitoring system on an annual basis where traditionally we competency assess them through observations of how they were driving. Now we use the simulator to competency assess, so we can introduce elements that we couldn't introduce if we were observing them on the terminal itself. So we can introduce things like snapping mooring lines, high wind speeds, etc., or those situations which we couldn't replicate when we're discharging a ship, such as a box being stuck in the guidelines as we're discharging or we're loading a ship. So those factors could be introduced via the simulator, which then helps us to assess the competency of our operatives.
Great. So just to zero in on the core topic of the day, which is operator safety, what has been the impact of simulation on operator safety?
Well, again, we've been on a learning curve here. I have to say, it's for us, it's been a fantastic addition. The reason is because what we are now finding, and initially we'd had discussions with people, but now we're finding ourselves, there is a lower incident rate of those who've been trained on simulators than those who haven't. I can't give you the reasons why that's the case, but that is what we are finding as evidence in our business. Now, one of the reasons could be because when you're trained on a simulator, you can actually make a mistake. And I think most of us who are familiar with learning things, we learn through our mistakes. Well, likewise, on our terminal, the fact that they could make a mistake means they're not likely to replicate that out on the terminal in the operation.
Great. So are there other uses of the simulator that are important? Are there other uses of the simulator that are important to?
Yes, we've broadened this out. We've got a resourcing issue. It's a global phenomenon of trying to find people to resource our business. So we have a sustainable long-term business. So what we now do is we work with our local communities. We work with the disadvantaged communities. We work with the local unemployment offices. We work with schools and universities, so they can have a look at what we do. You know, ports are not sexy businesses, and there is a perception that you have to be very strong male in order to do the job. And what we're trying to use the simulators for is demonstrate to our partners that actually you don't. It's about cognition, it's about the dexterity. So this makes us more attractive as a business to a wider resourcing base. So there are quite a few benefits to having a simulator, which again we hadn't planned for, but we've now recognized have huge benefits for our longer term business in attracting a more diverse workforce.
I suppose there's an extent to which somebody who might be otherwise intimidated by the process of trying these tasks, well, the simulator alleviates that stress.
Absolutely, very much so. It is intimidating when you're driving 400 tons of plant and equipment around a port. The ability to experience that immersively in a simulator is worth its weight in gold. A lot of people don't like it. Other people do like it, and they're attracted, and they may look at us as a business to join for their career or for a job.
And there's an extent to which it makes the assessment process easier, right?
Oh, again, we have a recruitment process now where traditionally, if they said they could drive a piece of plant or equipment and we looked at their certificates, we'd say, yes, you can, and we'd give them a height test. But then we recognized we were losing after 3 or 4 weeks training these people who didn't have the confidence when they were actually operating that equipment out on the terminal. So we now test every single person for their ability to handle plant equipment using the simulator. And again, it's had a huge benefit in terms of recruitment processes for us.
All right. My final question, can I ask you to speak to the cost or time savings where simulation is concerned? Is there any impact in that sense?
There is. I come back to the fact that on a simulator, our trainees can make mistakes. We learn from those mistakes. Woe betide if they were to make those mistakes out on the terminal, because there's a huge cost implication to us as a business. But they can do that on a simulator. So that has, in fact, helped build their confidence more quickly, and we can actually get our operatives, new operatives coming into our business and onto the job at a much faster pace than we traditionally could. When I say much faster pace, take, for example, our straddle carrier training. We tend to put them on the simulator for a week, and then they're out on with a full-time instructor for a week, and then they buddy up for the third week. Previously, they could spend almost 4 weeks with an instructor. So we've almost cut a week out of our training regime as a result of the introduction of a simulator.
Thank you, Simon. That was fantastic. To our audience, please don't hesitate to ask me any questions about our technology and our services, either during the Q&A session following this discussion, or else at our booth, which is booth C38, where we do have port equipment simulators running throughout the duration of the show. Thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of the session.
Great, thank you. So we'll go on to our next talk. Stefan Trauth is the Managing Director at Yardeye. He's going to be talking us through a particular case study at DP World Vancouver and the safe working environment underneath a 40-foot container in particular. Stefan's got 5 years as MD at Yardeye, but a lot of experience in automation and control.
So, hello everyone. I don't need to introduce myself, it's already done. Stefan Trauth. I'm a Managing Director from Yardeye, and I want to show in a case study in particular how we improved the safety at the DP World terminal. So is there also a... Okay, here we go. So what is Yardeye doing? Basically, Yardeye is a company. We provide real-time locator systems. We want to have the position of every object and every person and every crane. And when we know the position, we can use this to build up several functionalities, and our main functionality is a collision avoidance system. Well, the most terminals say they are super special and every processes are unique, and that's why we have a huge part of customization every time in our projects. And all of this will build a key turn solution, and this we are doing since 2017. So just a short outlook. So the burst point of Yardeye was in 2017 when GCT Vancouver wanted to have their solution. And from this time on, we have several installed projects. So we are having now 3 CSX terminals in place. One is missing in this part. And we are in the Rocky Mountain here is actually already live last year. And we are doing the commissioning for 3 more projects, like with UP, one with DP World, and shortly we will start together with LBCT. The ICHCA and TT Club people spoke a lot about the award, and we already won one in 2019. That was a safety award we got for our projects in Winter Haven with the CSX terminal. And we also got the 3rd prize with a PIMA, with the Innovation Award, behind Kona and Kalmar. So just small companies which were in front of us. So what was a request for DP World? How can we improve the safety in the DP World terminal? First of all, our projects are mainly in the intermodal area, so that's the point where we normally kick off our projects. Here you see the terminal. Oh, okay, something missing. You have a huge stacking yard. We do basically ITV tracking within the stacking yard, but without fulfilling any safety functionality over there. But in the bottom part, you see the intermodal area. It's basically a fenced area on the left and on the right, but it's open at the end. So that makes automation a little bit more complicated, because you need to have certain functionalities in place to ensure who is entering and who is leaving the rail yard area. And this is particularly the point of interest. And what are we doing? We have 2 areas. Underneath the crane, we have the rail yard area where we do personal tracking based on our RFID technology. So the yellow dots you see onto the crane, and they are also mounted on the high masts sideways. are receiver tags which are able to recognize the sender tag, and with a minimum of 3 receivers to a sender, you can basically calculate the position. It works like a GPS system, just in a small scale. Yeah. As you know, in US we have the double stacks container, so that is another challenge for our personal tracking, because you have roughly 5.5 meters, and you still need to be aware of the people, which are the yellow dot between the rail area here, which could be a person which is roughly 1.5 meter to 2 meters, something like this. So line of sight situation is not really so nice, but we are still able to get a nice position. And also very challenging, I wasn't aware of this at the beginning of the project, but we do also ITV tracking. We do the ITV tracking based on GPS and RFID as a backup. So if we lose a GPS signal, we still can switch over to the RFID, what we use as a main source in the personal tracking. But what we are doing here is basically the driver is still in the cabin, so they don't leave the cabin, and we place the container on the trailer during these people are inside the ITV, and it's quite challenging to be so precise that you don't stop the crane because you think you're 30 centimeters to the left inside the cabin. So how are we doing? So the hardware, basically, you see the GPS system on the trolley of the crane. You see the sensors on the high mast. You see the RFID sensors mounted onto the crane on the girder structure, and you also see equipped vehicle, ITV with GPS and also RFID, and server communication is realized by a wireless network. And all of this is basically in our responsibility, in our monitoring. We need to be aware of this. And the personal tracking is realized with this little tag. It's mounted on the hardhead to ensure the best line of sight situation and visibility. And also what I mentioned before, it's an open yard on the left and on the right. And that means on a certain point, we need to start the tracking functionality, that we ensure, okay, from checking in to checking out, we want to have a stable signal and a position of this person. Yeah? And with this unit, the people is responsibility to check in by himself, by a manual process, and we guarantee from the checking in process until he's checking out that we have a valid signal from this guy. And this is how it works. So I show you later a video as well. So you see the trolley. Underneath the trolley, we have the collision avoidance part, which is basically 4 zones, 2 slow down zones and 2 stop zones. And then you see the person. And around the person we generate a protection zone. This protection zone is flexible and can react based on different situations. And then we react if one zone hit the other one, so that's the software magic behind. And what we are doing when we are close to the crane, we have a defined halo like 5 by 5 meters. And when we're getting far away from the crane, the precision won't be precise anymore. But that doesn't scare me because the crane won't be affected by this precision. So we just enlarge the halo when we leaving the crane area or the direct crane area to a maximum size just for safety purposes. This is a video, for example, when we do the commissioning. And that's one of our main challenges was Corona, so no software developers on site. They did everything remote controlled. So we got access to all the cameras of the crane. And then we have our own simulation tool where we see what we are doing here. You see here a tag is moving along with a guy who's on the top here. And you see that we have here a little bit of personal tracking well, it's not too busy there and not too many containers, so that is not really a big challenge for us to get a good position. Later on, when it's getting busy and a lot of containers, this is what then causes a problem and makes the solution complicated. And this is how it looks like. So in a close proximity to the crane, defined halo size. When we go 50 meters away from the crane, the halo enlarge to both sides of maximum distance to the crane. It looks a little bit scary because you think it will affect your operation, but actually if the crane on the right side would now travel to left, the halo would shrink and wouldn't have any effect on your operation. And when he's coming closer to the crane, then again we shrink the halo down, that the crane trolley or spreader can move smoothly around and do his path optimization, because actually you never want that this collision situation happens. Your path optimization should be so intelligent that this situation never occurs. And here we go. That was the challenge for the ITV unloading. So they have a bypass lane. On the bypass lane, every ITV is free to move. On the pick and place lane, when they move in, they park underneath the crane. And then you want to put a container onto the trailer. And that was super difficult because sometimes we switch over from GPS to RFID. You have some light movements in the position. It's shaking a little bit around. And all of this need to be compensated that you won't stop your crane during the pick and place operation. Again, a small video on this. You see how small the halo on the cabin of the ITV is. You see the protection zones. So we are now moving into two slow down zones. So the crane is not able to move fast. He's at maximum 5% speed. But the yellow line never hit the halo of the ITV, because the yellow line would cause a safe stop of the crane. And that's what we don't want to have in this situation. That's what I want to just note as a side note. So basically, it's very important to have a precise position, of course. But more important are the safety zones around the objects, because they need to react based on the situation. Yeah? If, for example, we can react on the operation mode, we can react on different areas, like a service area or an operation area or whatever. And we need to be quite flexible to react every time based on the situation you are forced with. But the main safety functionality is when we lose a signal, like in this case, this grunt is switching now to a power off mode. Our last line of defense is every time an expanding halo. With the expanding halo, you stop basically the whole operation in your yard, and one will get aware of this, mostly the remote crane operator. And now they can give this guy on this grunt a call and say, hey, what's up with you? Did he pass out or whatever? Why do you switch the engine off? It's not allowed due to your processes. The engine must run at any time, and so on and so on. So the last line of defense, every time an expanding halo, and then react quite flexible to keep your operation high. Like in this case, for example, that's our projects with CSX. The people are not protected by a hard hat, they are purely protected by the vehicles. Yeah? So the people are forced by processes never to leave the vehicle. And what they are doing, for example, if a grunt is driving, so we have a small and long halo based on the maximum speed of the grunt, and when he's slowing down, we want that the people during his work is protected. So we snap the halo to both tracks, for example. The person can step onto the wagon, do the pinning work, step back on the vehicle, and then is completely protected by the halo of any vehicle. Of course, you can cheat the system, you can walk away from the vehicle, but every system can be cheatable. Yeah, the main applications we are in is intermodal rail operation. But I also see a lot of other use cases for this type of technology. This, for example, would be a driver assistance system for straddle carriers. It's like your parking system on the car, yeah, when you drive backwards, and we have a person with a hard hat mounted in area 4, and the guy is driving backwards with his straddle carrier. He knows he needs to be carefully because a person is coming close to him. Another area, perfect solution for us, because the sensor setup is perfectly designed for this, our ship-to-shore applications. We have straddle carrier against spreader. So we could avoid this type of accident that a straddle carrier gets hit by an spreader who's hoisted down. And when you already have the sensors there, you can also protect the pinning worker by doing his work underneath the ship-to-shore crane. We can set up different zones, like the red zone would stop the spreader from any movement if the person is inside this area. And when he's moving in the blue area, it can be here, it can be somewhere else. We can set that up this freely. We can release the spreader and he's free to move. And that was my part of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. So now we'll turn to the last presentation of this session. It's going to be Vikesh Danpat. He's the Regional Product Manager, EMEA, on the MoorMaster system for Cavotec. His prior experience includes APMT as well, so he's immersed in the port industry, and he's going to talk to us about the future of mooring.
Thank you, Martin, for the introduction. So, my name is Vikesh Danpat, Regional Product Manager at Cavotec. Thank you for joining this very interesting session on the future of mooring. But before I jump into the presentation, I first want to stress the importance of safety in this industry. I've worked 10 years at Maersk and APMT. I've been to many terminals worldwide and really been to the quay side where the action happens with the STS cranes. I've seen how dangerous these environments can be. And I think we all should strive in this industry to make sure that safety is the number one priority for everyone. Because we all want to go home, at least the employees and people working in the terminals, to go home to their families and kids. That is something that I wanted to say before I jump into the presentation. So behind me you see the MoorMaster system. This is a system that can moor a vessel without any use of, let's say, personnel on the quayside and any mooring ropes, and can do this within 30 seconds. So, without jumping right into the technology, I first want to highlight some of the major challenges in this industry. Number one, of course, is keeping our people safe. That should always be the number one priority for anyone. Of course, lately it's also reducing our carbon footprint in this industry. That's a very popular and hot topic at the moment. And of course, we operate in a very heavy asset-driven industry, so everything is costing a lot of money. And we need to make sure that we at least get a return on investment by, making sure that our terminals are profitable. So, of course, the session is about, keeping our people safe. I also want to demonstrate that you can have a safe solution, but also have a solution that can increase the productivity and reduce our carbon footprint. So during my presentation, I'll cover all of these challenges. So before we go into the challenges, I first wanted to show you and introduce you to the MoorMaster system. I'm going to show a short video on how it works. So here you can actually see a few of these units in a RoPax terminal in Helsinki. So there's no personnel, there's no mooring lines involved, and basically it can moor a vessel just by the simple push of a button, and it does this using vacuum mooring technology, and can do this under 30 seconds. So it's a lot quicker than having people running around on the quayside and with ropes and doing all these dangerous mooring activities. So here you can see that the vessel is moored safely without any ropes and without any people. So of course, jumping into the safety aspect, keeping our people safe. So according to maritimeexecutive.com, around 300 people worldwide, globally, are fatally injured during mooring activities. For me, it's quite sad to see that these people actually lose their lives, and it's a hazardous environment. If a rope snaps, then it's almost every case it's quite fatal. So it's quite sad to see, especially now I've worked in this industry for more than 10 years, that we still use technology, or let's say a process that humankind has used for thousands of years, right? it should be much more safer and much more efficient. So instead of having people on the quay side, you should have people in the offices where they can moor these vessels from the safety from their computer. And yeah, that's actually the goal for MoorMaster and for Cavotec, is to get people away from the quayside where the hazardous activities take place and put them safely in a much more automated environment behind the desk. And here you also create a lot more situational awareness. So without ropes, you don't actually know what's happening on the quayside. And with this kind of equipment, automated equipment, you can actually create a better situational awareness. You can actually see what's happening on the quay, what the forces are, what the wind is on the vessel. And you can actually have that on the tablet that you see in this picture. So, but most importantly, there's no risk to personnel. So here we have a few of these systems in a port in Salalah, Oman. And basically it can work with any type of vessel, and it's quite modular. You can extend it and put it on any type of berth and any type of vessel. And I just wanted to show this slide, which actually is data that we captured. Basically on the left side where you see a lot of the spikes, that's basically the vessel stability. So the vessel and how much it actually moves. And you see that with ropes, it's moving quite a bit. And that also creates a lot more tension on the ropes, so a lot more chances that you have snaps of the ropes, which can cause dangerous situations. So, and on the left side of the chart, you can actually see that with MoorMaster, the vessel stability, let's say the vessel movement is almost reduced to a few centimeters, which is, reducing the vessel movement a lot less, and that creates a much more safer environment. So apart from safety, you can have a safe solution, but still, you reduce your carbon footprint. So in this slide, a few slides, I just want to show how with the MoorMaster we're actually also slowing down the climate change. So I don't need to go into a lot of detail on this slide because we all know that this is a hot topic at the moment. We're trying to reduce our carbon footprint in this industry. And the Cavotec MoorMaster system is also one of the solutions that can help with this. We've done a study in let's say a typical container port. Basically what you saw in the video is that you reduce your mooring time and your unmooring time from, typical mooring time is like 30 minutes for a container vessel. That is something that you can reduce. So in this case, we actually reduced like 30 minutes mooring time, 15 minutes unmooring time, and let's assume that it's 150 calls per year, or let's say 160 calls per year. The vessel engines, due to the time that we save, the vessel engines can be turned down a lot quicker, and you don't use the tugboats that much, right? Because the whole mooring process has taken a lot quicker. So you don't need to use the engines that much. So for this typical study with 160 calls in a container port, we have actually reduced almost 2,000 tons of CO2 annually. So that's quite a lot compared to the conventional way of mooring. And of course, reducing harmful emissions, right? So it's not only the carbon footprint, but also the environment that we work in. That's also the NOxes and the SOxes that we're trying to reduce. So basically, without only talking about MoorMaster, Cavotec has also invested a lot in shore power. Actually, even before it became a hot topic in the industry, Cavotec was doing a lot on shore power as well. So shore power itself from Cavotec is quite a safe solution. It's stored in the pits on the berth, so it's away from the ropes and personnel. So it's quite a safe solution that Cavotec has provided, and it's not just a novel technology in itself. Cavotec has already been doing this for quite some years and already on 50 terminals across 12 countries. And the same can be said about RoPax terminals as well. Now going back to the mooring solution, Here we've done the same study, and basically we found out that there's almost like 6,000 tons of NOx that we save by reducing the mooring time on the vessel side and the tugs, of course, that you use. And that's an equivalent around 2,000 of diesel cars. So you make the environment a lot safer, but also a lot cleaner. And that's also what we want to promote with the MoorMaster system. And of course, what I said in the beginning, coming from a Maersk and APMT background, your terminal is still, it's good to be safe. That's the number one priority. But you also want to have equipment that's increasing productivity, right? So now coming back to the same slide, basically in terms of, it's quite straightforward. Imagine if your vessel is a lot more stable. The crane operator has a lot easier job picking up boxes. It sounds like a video game that the STS crane operator is trying to pick boxes, but try to catch a box when a vessel is moving a lot, right? So sometimes I've seen that these crane operators would take like 3 or 4 tries to grab a box. And when your vessel is more stable, using a MoorMaster, they can grab the container in one go. So your berth productivity has increased quite a bit. So that's also one of the benefits that come with a safe equipment such as the MoorMaster. And again, one of the other benefits that I want to describe in this picture is that here you actually see that the vessel is actually longer than the berth. And that's possible because we have installed MoorMaster systems, and with the same key infrastructure, you can moor larger vessels. This wouldn't be possible if you had mooring lines, right? Because you had to use either head or stern lines to moor this big of a vessel. But in this case, the terminal and the port saved quite a lot of money on extending the quay, quite a lot of money, and they still can berth a big vessel using the MoorMaster. So a few of my final slides. What's new? So the MoorMaster NXG is one of the new products that Cavotec has developed. It's specifically built for terminals where there's not a lot of space between the quay side and, let's say, the STS crane rail. So the NXG is a lot slimmer, smaller in depth. They made it very easy to install, and it's faster installation. And of course, it's equipped with all kinds of smart sensors, so that's why we can keep track of all the forces and on the vessel and the wind conditions, and we can remotely monitor the equipment as well. So one final thing, of course, also we have looked at how terminals operate, of course, and one of the few things, let's say the first thing that we launched last year is, instead of selling this equipment as a CAPEX investment, you can now actually have it as a MoorMaster service. So you turn your investment into an OPEX expenditure. This makes it for container terminals and for terminals at large quite easy to actually buy this kind of equipment, because you get your benefits from day one. You don't need to worry about payback periods and that kind of stuff after 4 years getting your investment back. This is really gaining benefits from day one. So making it easier for the customers to get a safe equipment, but also better equipment as well. So with that said, I'm coming to the final slide. So I hope you have learned about what the MoorMaster is, what automated mooring can do for the industry. It creates a safer environment, makes it more productive as well. So, and as well, it makes every minute counts. But I also want to stress that every life counts, right? So that's the main idea behind this type of equipment: productivity and safety. All right, that was my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you, Vikesh. I'd like to call all the speakers back up for Q&A. So, maybe I'll just start with one or two that I had of my own. One for Mike or Richard. What I've seen a bit is that it's the smaller terminals that often have issues. So is it always going to be difficult to reach them and get those messages out about safe practices, etc.? I mean, what can we do about small terminals and trying to reach them? Is that an issue, or is it just less of it?
Okay, I think that seems to be working.
Yeah.
I think some of the problems are different in different scales of operation, but I've never struggled to work with smaller terminals and larger terminals. I think it's about developing solutions and communicating and sharing information and knowledge in a way that they can use proactively, rather than it being a particular problem of a type or scale of port activity.
I think maybe just to add to that as well, I think sometimes maybe the smaller terminal is more manageable in terms of implementing either new procedures or monitoring existing procedures. But I think one of the comments that Vikesh made in his presentation there about the subscription model, again, not every safety solution has to be a large-scale capital expenditure investment anymore. I think there are more and more sort of greater recognition now. And I think that maybe makes this type of solution more accessible to the smaller operator. But
great, thank you. I've got a few more questions here, but let's pop to the audience. Gentleman near the front here,
I was writing for Cabotec for a year about shore power and Moormaster, and I know all the benefits of that. I was writing as a maritime influencer. But regarding shore power and Moormaster, shore power, there are policy intentions here by the European Union, now the Biden administration. Then regulations are moving in that direction. Before there was no regulation, and then if you take just the American continent, for instance, you had the west coast of the U.S. in favor of shore power, but then the east coast and all Latin America, no interest at all. And but Moormaster, automated mooring, there is no interest. I mean, no, I'm not saying interest. There is no regulation. Then what I see is that shore power will advance very fast, but automated mooring will go very slow. I would like your opinion about that. And about the two of you, the question is the following. When one sees to the maritime accidents investigation branch of the different countries, the UK by far the best of all, but you can take the Danish or the US or the Canadian, Australia, you see these amazing reports, 30 pages, 40 pages report, and from there are lessons. And that's how the maritime industry has moved. From accidents, then IMO comes with regulations. And then for ships, you have a parting line if it happens on a port. But mainly you have accidents at sea. Grounding, flooding, dragging anchor if it's in the harbor, and collision, near misses, contact, and so on. You see, this is excellent, and they have lessons. For the ports, there is nothing. Then there is not the national authorities of the ports in the developed countries, in emerging countries. They are not producing. There is not this type of investigation. And then you want to see, for instance, how many stevedores die for something, for others. If the maritime authorities didn't mention because of a shipping accident, and it was just at the port, there is no information at all. What's your take on that?
Okay, thanks. Let's start with Vikesh on that one.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think with shore power, indeed, there's a burning need to electrify ports. And you're right, we're talking with a lot of port authorities. We're trying to change how mooring needs to take place. And this is a collaboration between the port authorities, with the terminal operators, and with suppliers such as Cabotec. So it's not something that we will solve overnight, but we have to get the conversation going and convince the different parties to kind of look at new types of technologies, because it's beneficial for human life, it's beneficial for the ports, and it's just a good technology to have. So it will take time, but I think communication is key.
Mike?
Yeah, again, a great question, and it's something I think in pockets we see around the world, sharing of information and near-miss information. But yeah, and maybe a hand to Richard just to pick up on some of other initiatives. No.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The picture is incomplete around the world, and if I could change things tomorrow, that would be my mission. Would be to be able to collect honestly and openly the learning from all sorts of incidents around the world. We're ITCA is doing a project at the moment looking at serious incidents, because those tend to get reported in some way or another. But often it's very difficult to get to the core lessons. You'll see lots of reports that will just say human error. But the question really is, what sort of working environments, what sort of training and skills, what sort of working hours, what sort of systems and processes have been put into place to create an environment where human beings can succeed in delivering the safe work and safe operations. So it's a brilliant question. ITCA is working on trying to collect data as a starting point, but there are... I think we're probably only seeing 20% of what's actually out there, and it's a case of finding new and innovative ways of getting into that remaining bigger picture. Sorry, it's an incomplete answer, but we're working on it.
Thanks. So just to follow up on the first part of that question, it might be a good opportunity to ask about the difficulty, I guess, of demonstrating a return on investment for technology to help safety. So maybe Simon and Stefan and then Vikesh again. Maybe do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's and I think I alluded it into my answers to David earlier on. It is quite difficult, particularly when it's a big spend, particularly for smaller operators when it comes to a big spend, of getting that return on investment. I think there's such a focus on the monetary side. Sometimes we forget about the other areas, such as safety. You know, just for example, if one of our operatives were to hit a container with a straddle carrier, then it could be 25,000 euros worth of damage. You times that by 3, suddenly it's 75,000 euros, and those are the type of costs that perhaps we should be looking at, which would then underline and underpin some of the safety and drilling down as to why these accidents take place. Certainly, from my perspective, there's a lot of focus for us as a business on complacency. I think a lot of operators are very good at what they do, but unfortunately, as humans are likely to, they get used to something and they get complacent. And it's measuring that complacency. Big question is, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The most considerable dimension to consider in terms of ROI is the safety aspect. And there are other aspects as well, ranging from operator assessment and the time that is saved during that assessment process using simulation, as well as the training process itself. The learning curve tends to be much faster if you have this safe environment in which to train. As a result, right out of the gate, operators that are trained using simulators tend to have a higher degree of productivity for a certain amount of time than the traditionally trained operators. And this for 3 to 6 months or so. So these are the kinds of savings that scale up. The busier and larger your port terminal is. But yes, back to Simon's point, the most important element to focus on is the safety aspect and the safety benefits to the operators.
Stefan, did you want to follow up there?
Yes, sure. So first of all, I think put a return on investment calculation on a safety system is a wrong approach, because it's proactive and you don't want that the accident happens. So it's hard to say, okay, with 2 or 3 prevented accidents, you have the return on investment on your solution. But secondly, what are we speaking about with our solution? So you have a full automated environment, and you want to work with people simultaneously in the same time underneath full automated cranes. That wasn't possible before. Before you had a fenced area, the people are going in doing their work, and the crane is not operating during this time. And then you go out of the area, switch in full automation, and then you can operate. So that's how it worked normally, And that is a huge time saving, and time saving you can put into a return calculation, and that makes everything a little bit more nicer. And as more customized the solution is, as better your crane can move around the objects and can put can reach their destination in an optimized path. So that's also a point of efficiency, way harder to calculate than the on-off situation. But there are several points who make a return on investment quite significant.
Yeah. And Vikesh, did you want to follow up as well?
Yeah, so I think you've seen in the presentation that there are quite some benefits, luckily as well, by using the automated boring system. So a few of these are like increasing your berth productivity. So just a story short, there is, of course, a business case behind it, right? But it's, when I think back about my experience with Maersk and APMT, of course, those are like big corporate companies. The decision is quite easier to make, right? You don't really decide on, okay, how much is a human life. That was much more a management decision saying, okay, we want to be a safe terminal operator, 0 accidents, so we're going to invest in this type of solutions. But for the MoorMaster, instead, it's increasing safety, but it's also increasing the productivity and reducing the carbon footprint. So in that sense, I'm lucky to actually have this kind of product that I'm putting out to customers. It's increasing safety, and it's also helping the customer to be more productive. So I'm kind of proud of that product.
Well, thank you for the presentation. My question is, how often does it need maintenance since it's an OpEx, and what type of services it requires?
Is that for Vikesh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. So maintenance, there's always a yearly maintenance, right? It's like any type of equipment, whether it's an STS crane or an RTG, it always needs some kind of maintenance. So for the MoorMaster itself, there are some yearly consumables. That's not a lot. I can show you all the details if you come by our stand at Cavotec. And of course, there's let's say a minor maintenance period after 5 years and then after 10 years, but then you extend the lifetime of the equipment to almost 20 years. So it's like any type of equipment in port operations, you need to do maintenance. If you sweat the assets, then of course the equipment will break down a lot faster. So you need to be smart about it. Do your maintenance on time and your asset will live longer.
My last question is, has been there any failure cases with the technology breaking down suddenly when the ship is on the berth?
So from my experience, I've now been working with Cavotec for 1 year. So from my experience, I haven't seen any major breakdowns. The equipment that Cavotec has put out in Port of Salalah, Oman, has been operating for the last 2 years without any failures. And just come by our booth. There's a lot of experts out there that can tell you. But the equipment has improved quite a lot, and it's really a reliable equipment. And Port of Salalah is quite happy with that equipment.
Thank you very much.
For Simon, the ships of the past had plenty of crew, and the ports of the past had plenty of stevedores. Nowadays, you see much less number, and in 10, 15 years, you will have crewless vessels, the new builds, and you will have ports without stevedores or even pilots. How do you sell this to the trade unions, for instance? It's true that you will create jobs in another sectors, or they will lose the jobs there. Just if you can explain, how do you communicate this with the trade unions, for instance, in the ports? Because one can tell them that they will see new jobs in different sectors, but they will lose the jobs in ships and they will lose the jobs in ports. And just for David and Stephen, last week I was in Posidonia in Greece, and I listened the usual criticism by some of the developers of solutions for ships that IMO is not put in regulation, that there is a mess there because there are many different systems. I'm not an expert on these kind of solutions, but they complain a lot about this. I tell them, well, don't wait for guys of IMO because they are always well behind, and they reply to accidents. And because in these cases there are not happening accidents in ships, then they are not taking decisions now. What happened about ports? Do you see also this in the ports cases, this kind of mess between different solutions by different providers, or is something more kind of order on that?
Coming to the first part of the question, as I understood it, automation is really important for the future of our sector and for safety generally within our business. And so the more we demonstrate that we are in tune with technology, the more likely we are to attract people to our business. And I think the use of technology provides us with information, it provides us with an understanding of where things go wrong, it provides us with greater consistency. And if we can encourage people to make use of technology, even at a stevedoring level, then again, I think the incident rates will reduce. But I think there's an investment requirement in the pork sector across the globe, and it does take a lot of money to do that. But I do think that technology will lead to a safer environment.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
That's a big debate in itself, isn't it? Maybe if we pass over to Stefan.
I'm not sure if I get it 100% right. So I understood the question as, does different technology interfere to each other? Was it like this, or was it more like third-party handling?
Or maybe, yeah, if it's going to be too long, we might have to cut it because we're under pressure on time. But yeah, maybe follow up on that afterwards. But before we do that, if we could just thank our presenters here for their time and the information they've given us. Thank you.